Innocent black man wrongly arrested, but what he says in court makes the judge apologize. Derek Johnson had been standing before the judge for exactly 23 minutes when he decided he couldn't stay silent any longer. The handcuffs weighed heavily on his wrists, but not as much as the injustice he had carried in his heart for 7 months. "Your Honor, you're going to listen to me now," Derek said, interrupting the prosecutor who was reading the charges, "because what I have to say will change everything in this room." Judge Richard Harrison looked up from his papers for the first time since the hearing began. There was something in the man's voice that made him pause. It wasn't desperation. It was certainty. "Mr. Johnson, you'll have your turn to speak when—" "No, Counselor. My turn is now. Do you know a little girl named Emily Harrison?" The judge's blood ran cold. His hands trembled slightly as he set down his gavel. Emily was his 8-year-old granddaughter, and no one in that courtroom should have known that. "How do you know that name?" The judge's voice was quieter than usual. "Because 3 years ago, on a December afternoon, I saved her life." Chew. Courtroom fell completely silent. The prosecutor closed the file he was holding. The court reporter stopped typing. Even the guards flanking Derek seemed frozen in place. Derek took a deep breath and continued. "You don't recognize me because that day I was in uniform. I worked as a lifeguard on Miami Beach. Your granddaughter was drowning in a rip current. The woman watching her was screaming desperately on the shore." Judge Harrison felt the world spin. Memories of that day flooded back like an avalanche. The frantic phone call from his daughter, the rush to the hospital, the relief when he learned Emily was safe, and the man who had saved her. "Go on," the judge whispered, his authority momentarily forgotten. "I swam against the current for 15 minutes. By the time I reached Emily, she had already lost consciousness. I performed CPR right there in the water while fighting to get back. I almost died with her that day, Counselor, but I managed to bring her back." Dear listener, if you're enjoying this story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. Tears welled in Judge Harrison's eyes. He remembered perfectly now. The exhausted black man sitting on the sand after handing Emily over to the paramedics, his daughter hugging her child's savior, crying with gratitude. And he had shaken that man's hand and promised never to forget what he had done. "But you forgot, didn't you?" Derek continued, his voice not filled with anger but with deep sorrow. "For you forgot my face, you forgot my name, and now you're about to convict me for a crime I didn't commit. Mr. Johnson, Let me finish, please. After I saved your granddaughter, I went back to my post. No reporters wanted to interview the black lifeguard who made the rescue. The papers only called me an anonymous hero. I kept working, saving lives, until the day I was laid off because the city cut funding." Prosecutor Michael Peterson, who had been silently observing the scene, felt a tightness in his chest. He had built the entire case against Derek, based on circumstantial evidence and the testimony of a single witness. "With no job and a daughter to raise alone after my wife passed, I took work as a security guard at an electronics store in downtown. That's where it all started. On March 15th at 2 in the afternoon, I was at home, sick, with a doctor's note, but a woman swore she saw me robbing the store where I worked. The witness was certain in her identification," the prosecutor interjected, trying to regain control of the situation. "The witness said she saw a tall black man in a security uniform. Do you know how many black security guards work at that mall, Mr. Peterson?" 18. "Do you know how many were investigated?" 1. "Me." Derek paused, looking straight into the judge's eyes. "Do you know why? Because the store manager, Mr. Gregory Parker, said I was the only one with access to the safe." "That's a lie. All the guards on shift had access, but I was the only one who had complained about unpaid wages, the only one who had threatened to stand up for my rights." The public defender, Ms. Amanda Rodriguez, who had been assigned to the case just a week earlier, stood up. "Your Honor, my client is right. Reviewing the case files, I've noticed several inconsistencies that weren't properly investigated." "Ms. Rodriguez, you've barely had time to study the case," the prosecutor countered. "Exactly why I saw it with fresh eyes, Mr. Peterson." The witness, Mrs. Elizabeth Mills, has severe nearsightedness. She wasn't wearing her glasses the day of the crime. How could she be certain about the identification from 20 meters away? Judge Harrison felt the weight of every word. How many cases had he ruled on in recent years based on similar evidence? How many men like Derek had passed through his courtroom without him truly seeing them? There's more, Derek continued. The real reason I'm here isn't the robbery. It's because I refused to stay silent. Because when I found out the manager was embezzling money and blaming the security guards, I reported it. I have proof. What proof? Asked the judge, his voice now urgent. Recordings, conversations, documents, all on my phone, which was seized and mysteriously lost by the police. But what they don't know is that I backed everything up. My 15-year-old daughter, Jasmine, has access to everything in the cloud. Mr. Michael Peterson felt the case crumbling before his eyes. As a prosecutor, his duty was to seek justice, not just convictions. But the pressure for results, the rush, the backlog of cases, when had he stopped questioning? Why didn't you present this earlier? The prosecutor asked. I tried. My first lawyer said it was better to take a plea deal, accept a lighter sentence. He said no one would believe me over the testimony of a middle-class white woman and a respected manager. He said my clean record didn't matter, that my skin color would speak louder. The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone in that room felt the weight of truth in Derek's words. You know what's worse, Your Honor? Derek continued, tears now streaming down his face. My daughter sees me being treated like a criminal. The same girl I taught to always tell the truth, to trust the justice system, sees me handcuffed, humiliated, called a thief. How do I explain to her that the system meant to protect us is the same one that condemns us without proof? Judge Harrison could no longer maintain his professional composure. The tears he had tried to hold back began to fall. He now saw with crystal clarity the man before him, not a case number, not just another defendant, but the hero who had saved his granddaughter. A father trying to keep his dignity in front of his daughter, a man fighting against a system that had already judged him. Mr. Johnson, the judge's voice trembled, I need to call a recess, but before that I need to say something. The judge stood up, something he rarely did during a hearing. Everyone in the room was stunned by the gesture. I failed you. Not just today, but from the day I forgot your face. You saved what I hold most precious in this world, and I was about to condemn you without even looking into your eyes. Your Honor, this is highly irregular, the prosecutor tried to interject. Mr. Peterson, this entire situation is irregular. An innocent man is being accused without solid evidence. We are adjourning this hearing. I want the defense to present all the evidence mentioned. And I want a full investigation into the disappearance of the defendant's cell phone. Amanda Rodriguez seized the moment. Your Honor, I also request the testimony of my client's daughter regarding the backup documents and a confrontation between the witness and the defendant, this time with Ms. Mills wearing the proper glasses. Granted. And furthermore, Mr. Peterson, I want the district attorney's office to investigate the allegations against the manager, Gregory Parker. Immediately. Derek felt his legs weaken. After 7 months of nightmare, someone was finally willing to hear the truth. There's something you need to know, Judge Harrison, Derek said. That day at the beach when I saved Emily, I thought about my Jasmine. I thought if it were her drowning, I'd want someone to do the same. I never expected a reward. I never expected recognition. I just expected justice when I needed it. The judge nodded, deeply moved. You will have justice, Mr. Johnson. You have my word. And this time, I won't forget. When the recess was called and Derek was being escorted out of the room, Prosecutor Michael Peterson caught up with him in the hallway. Mr. Johnson, I'm sorry. I let my prejudices and the pressure of the job cloud my judgment. Derek stared at him for a moment before responding. Counselor, do you know how many people like me aren't lucky enough to have saved a judge's granddaughter? How many are locked up right now for crimes they didn't commit? The problem isn't me. It's the system you represent. The words hit Michael like a punch. He had gone to law school to deliver justice, but when had he become just an accusation? Machine. In the days that followed, the investigation revealed far more than anyone had expected. Gregory Parker, the store manager, had orchestrated not just one, but several thefts over 2 years, always blaming employees, always targeting the most vulnerable. Black people, those from the Northeast, those who couldn't afford good lawyers. When confronted while wearing her glasses, Ms. Mills admitted she wasn't sure about the identification. She had been pressured by Gregory, her nephew, to point out Derek at the police station. He said Derek was trouble, that he was already causing problems at the company, she confessed, crying. He said it would be better for everyone if he was gone. I didn't think about the consequences. Forgive me, Mr. Johnson. Derek listened to the apology in silence. Forgiveness would come eventually, but the scars would take time to heal. During the investigation, other facts came to light. Derek learned he had been fired from his lifeguard job not due to budget cuts, but because he had reported an illegal fee scheme involving beach vendors. Every time he tried to do the right thing, the system punished him. Jasmine, his daughter, testified about the backup files. The articulate, brave teenager moved everyone present. My dad taught me to keep evidence of everything, she said. He told me the truth would come out one day. I believed him, even when everyone said he was guilty. Because I know my father. He's the man who wakes up at 5 in the morning to make my breakfast, who came to every school event, who taught me that our character is the one thing no one can take from us. Judge Harrison, present at the hearing, fought back tears once again. He saw in Jasmine the same age Emily would be in a few years, and thought about the kind of world he was leaving for them. Amanda Rodriguez, the public defender, worked tirelessly. On the case, she discovered that Derek had been one of the best lifeguards on Miami Beach, with over 50 recorded rescues. He had received commendations, but none had stopped his dismissal when he became inconvenient. It's a pattern, Your Honor, she argued in the next hearing. Derek Johnson is systematically punished for doing the right thing, for being honest in a system that rewards corruption and silence. The case began gaining attention. Journalists who had ignored the rescue of Emily years earlier now wanted interviews. Derek refused them all. I don't want to be the black man who was saved because he rescued a rich white girl, he told Amanda. I want justice because it's my right, not because I did a favor for someone important. But the media pressure had its effect. Other similar cases began to surface. Employees who had been falsely accused by Gregory Parker started speaking out. A full-blown scheme was uncovered, involving not just the electronics store but several businesses in the mall. During this time, something unexpected happened. Judge Harrison began visiting Derek during preliminary hearings, always before or after sessions. I need to understand, he said in one of these conversations. How did you keep faith in justice even when it failed you? Who said I did? Derek replied. Some days the only thing stopping me from giving up is my daughter's face. She believes in me, so I pretend to believe in the system for her. Their conversations became more frequent. The judge, nearing retirement, began questioning his entire career. How many Dereks have I condemned? He asked one particularly difficult afternoon. How many innocent people passed through my courtroom without me truly seeing them? What matters is what you do now, Derek answered. We can't change the past, but the future. It was during one of these talks that Harrison mentioned Emily again. She asks about you sometimes, remembers the hero guy from the beach. We kept your identity secret at the time to protect your privacy, but she never forgot. Kids have that ability to see what really matters, Derek said. Too bad we lose it when we grow up. 3 months after that first dramatic hearing, the case went to final trial. The courtroom was packed. Employees who had been victims of the scheme, journalists, law students, all wanted to witness the outcome. Gregory Parker had already been arrested, along with 3 other managers involved in the corruption. The evidence Derek provided had been crucial in dismantling the entire network. Prosecutor Michael Peterson did something unprecedented in his career. He asked for Derek's acquittal and issued a formal apology on behalf of the district attorney's office. This case taught me a lesson I'll never forget, he said. Justice cannot be so blind that it fails to see its own biases. Derek Johnson isn't just innocent. He's an example of integrity that shames all of us in the legal system who failed him. Amanda Rodriguez delivered her final defense with eloquence. Derek Johnson saved lives on Miami Beach. He saved the granddaughter of the magistrate presiding over this session, and even when betrayed by the system sworn to protect. Citizens like him. He kept saving lives by exposing the corruption that victimized other innocents. If anyone deserves not just acquittal but an apology from society, it's him. When it was Derek's turn to speak, he rose slowly. The handcuffs had been removed, but the invisible marks remained. For months, I rehearsed what I'd say at this moment. I thought about speaking on anger, injustice, how the system failed me. But looking at all of you today, I realize my story isn't just mine. It belongs to every Derek, James, and Charles who are judged by their skin color before they're heard. It's for all the fathers who have to explain to their children why Daddy is in jail without having done anything wrong. He paused, looking directly at Judge Harrison. Judge Harrison, you asked me how I keep my faith. The truth is I almost lost it, but your granddaughter, Emily, taught me something that day at the beach. When she opened her eyes, after I thought I'd lost her, the first thing she said was, "Thank you." A 5-year-old girl nearly dying, and she gave thanks. If she could find gratitude in that moment, who am I to live in anger? Tears streamed down the faces of many in the courtroom. Judge Harrison no longer tried to hide his. "I don't want revenge," Derek continued. "I want change. I want my daughter to live in a country where she's judged by the content of her character, not the color of her skin. I want other fathers to never go through what I did, and I want to believe my suffering wasn't in vain, that something will change because of this." The silence that followed was profound. When Judge Harrison finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of a lifetime of reflection. "Mr. Derek Johnson, this court not only acquits you of all charges, but also recognizes that you were the victim of a grave judicial error. But more than that, this judge, Richard Harrison, asks for your forgiveness. Forgiveness for forgetting the face of the man who saved my granddaughter. Forgiveness for representing a system that failed you, and forgiveness for nearly perpetuating this injustice." The judge did something unprecedented. He stepped down from the bench and walked toward Derek. "You've taught me more about justice these past months than I learned in 30 years. On the bench, if you'll allow me." Then, in front of everyone, Judge Harrison embraced Derek, a long hug filled with remorse on one side and forgiveness on the other. The room erupted in applause. People wept openly. Journalists scrambled to capture the historic moment. But what happened next left an even deeper mark on everyone present. The courtroom door opened, and Jasmine ran into her father's arms. "I knew it, Dad. I always knew the truth would win." Derek held his daughter tightly, finally letting months of pent-up emotions spill out in tears. "You never doubted me, sweetheart. You were my strength." A second surprise awaited. An 8-year-old girl entered the room shyly, accompanied by a woman. It was Emily, the judge's granddaughter. "Grandpa said I could thank you now," she said, stepping closer to Derek. "Thank you for saving me, Uncle. Mommy says you're a hero." Derek knelt to meet her eye level. "I just did what anyone would do, Emily. What matters is that you're okay." "That's not true," the girl said, with the peculiar wisdom of children. "Mommy said lots of people saw me drowning, but only you jumped in. That makes you special." The weeks following the trial were transformative. Derek received job offers from several companies but chose a different path. With the help of Amanda, Rodriguez, and surprisingly Judge Harrison, he founded an organization to help those wrongfully accused. "I don't want my case to be the exception," he explained at the launch. "I want it to be the start of real change." Judge Harrison, deeply moved by everything that had happened, retired early and began volunteering with the organization. "I spent decades judging. Now I want to spend the rest of my life helping prevent injustices." Michael Peterson also changed. He became known for meticulously reviewing cases, especially those involving Black and low-income defendants. He established a protocol at the district attorney's office to avoid charges based solely on circumstantial evidence. Amanda Rodriguez was invited to speak at universities about the case. He always began his speeches with a phrase that became emblematic: "Justice cannot be colorblind when prejudice sees in color." But perhaps the most profound change was the unlikely friendship that blossomed between Derek and Richard. The two began meeting regularly, no longer as defendant and judge, but as two men trying to understand and fix a flawed system. During one of these meetings, as they drank coffee at a simple bakery in downtown Miami, Richard confessed, "You know, what scares me the most, Derek? thinking that if you hadn't saved Emily, I probably would have signed your conviction without blinking. But you didn't, Derek replied. And that makes all the difference. You chose to listen, you chose to change. Not everyone has that courage. The organization they founded grew quickly. Similar cases began pouring in from across the state, stories of injustices that likely would have remained buried if not for Derek's courage to speak up during that hearing. Jasmine, inspired by her father's fight, decided to study law. I want to be like Ms. Rodriguez, she said. I want to defend those without a voice. A year after the trial, a seminar on judicial reform was held. Derek was the keynote speaker. In the audience, alongside legal scholars and students, were many of the people impacted by his story. A justice system that sees nothing beyond stereotypes isn't justice. It's institutionalized oppression, he said. My case shouldn't be seen as an isolated victory, but as a warning. How many innocent people are imprisoned right now because no one stopped to truly listen to their stories? The impact of the Derek Johnson case, as it became known, extended far beyond Miami. Law schools included it in their curricula. Courts adopted stricter protocols for cases based on visual identification. The National Council on Justice formed a commission to review similar convictions. But for Derek, the greatest victory was simpler, walking with his head held high beside his daughter, proving that truth, no matter how long it takes, prevails, and turning his pain into purpose. On a sunny afternoon 2 years after the trial, Derek was back at Miami Beach, not as an official lifeguard but as a volunteer teaching children from underserved communities how to swim. "Uncle Derek," one of the kids shouted, "look how—" "Well, I can float now." He smiled, remembering it had all started there on that very beach. The circle had closed, but in a way he never could have imagined. Richard appeared on the beach, as he often did now. The two had developed a habit of walking together, discussing the organization's cases. "We got 3 more cases reviewed this week," the former judge said. 3 lives getting a second chance," Derek replied. "Every minute of this fight is worth it." As they walked, a middle-aged woman approached them. "Are you Derek Johnson?" she asked, her voice trembling. "My son was acquitted because of your work. He was innocent, but no one believed him until you stepped in. Thank you so much." Scenes like this had become common. The organization had already helped dozens of people, and the waiting list kept growing. Amanda Rodriguez, now the organization's legal coordinator, brought important news that day. The Supreme Court accepted our petition. They'll rule on the unconstitutionality of convictions based solely on photo identification. It was a historic victory. If approved, the decision could impact thousands of cases nationwide. "It all started with your courage in that courtroom," Amanda told Derek. "It wasn't courage," he replied. "It was desperation. The difference is I found people willing to listen." The swimming program for underprivileged children had also grown. Jasmine, now in her 2nd year of law school, handled the administrative side. "Dad, we already have 200 kids signed up. We'll need more volunteers." "A good problem to have," Derek smiled. Emily, now 10 years old, was one of the junior volunteers, helping with the younger children. "Uncle Derek saved me. Now I help save others," she said proudly. The relationship between the Johnson and Harrison families had grown closer, in a way no one could have predicted. Shared dinners were common, and discussions about social justice became part of their family conversations. During one of these gatherings, Richard's daughter, Emily's mother, made a confession. "You know, Derek, that day at the beach when you saved Emily, I saw how people treated you. I saw how the police wanted to search you first before congratulating you. I saw how some parents pulled their children away when you approached, even though you were covered in glory. And I said nothing. I'm sorry for that." "No need to apologize," Derek replied. "What matters is that you see things differently now, and you're helping others see too." The work wasn't easy. For every success story, there were 2 or 3 cases where bureaucracy and prejudice still won. But the group's persistence was unshakable. Michael Peterson, now one of the cause's main supporters, managed to implement significant changes at the district attorney's office. "We've created a dedicated hotline for cases of potential racial discrimination. It's a start. Every great river begins with a small spring. Derek mused. 3 years after the trial, Derek received an unexpected invitation. The American Bar Association wanted to honor him with the Defender of Human Rights Medal. "I'm not a lawyer," he protested. "But you've done more for justice than many of us with degrees," replied the ABA president. The ceremony was emotional. Derek dedicated the honor to all the innocent people still waiting for justice. "This medal isn't mine. It belongs to all those who were silenced, to all those who were judged unfairly, to all those still waiting for someone to believe in their innocence." At the same event, the creation of the Derek Johnson Act was announced, establishing stricter criteria for convictions based on single testimonies and photo identifications. Jasmine, present at the ceremony, couldn't contain her pride. "My dad has a law named after him, Mum," she said tearfully, looking up at the sky. "I hope you're seeing this from wherever you are." The mention of his late wife brought tears to Derek's eyes. He often wondered what she would say about everything that had happened. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. Richard, noticing his friend's emotion, placed a hand on his shoulder. "She would be proud. You turned pain into purpose, injustice into change." Derek's life had completely transformed, but he remained humble. He still lived in the same modest apartment, still woke up early to make his daughter's coffee, and was still the same principled man who had been wronged. "Fame shouldn't go to your head," he'd say. "At the end of the day, I'm just a father trying to leave a better world for his daughter." The organization's work expanded to other states. Landmark cases were revisited, innocent people were freed, and most importantly, the conversation about systemic racism in the justice system gained national momentum. At a national conference of judges, Richard was invited to speak about his experience. "I spent 30 years thinking I was fair because I applied the law. Derek Johnson taught me that justice without empathy is just bureaucracy. We need to look beyond the files. We need to see the people." The statement sparked controversy among some more conservative colleagues, but planted seeds of change in many others. Amanda Rodriguez, in turn, became a national reference in defending the wrongly accused. She wrote a book about the Derek Johnson case that became required reading in many law schools. Derek's story teaches us that justice isn't an abstract concept. It's something we build or destroy with every decision, every unchallenged prejudice, every voice we choose not to hear. The book dedicated an entire chapter to that transformative hearing when Derek decided to speak about saving Emily. Amanda described the moment as when humanity triumphed over bureaucracy. Gregory Parker and the others involved in the scheme were convicted. During his trial, several of the employees he had wronged testified. Derek was one of them. "I'm not here for revenge," he said in court. "I'm here because justice must be for everyone. If we fight to prove our innocence, we must also fight to hold the truly guilty accountable." Gregory's conviction was a milestone. It showed that the system, even flawed, could be corrected when people of goodwill came together. 4 years later, Jasmine graduated from law school. The graduation ceremony was a deeply emotional moment for Derek. "My daughter, you are living proof that suffering can turn into purpose. Use your knowledge to be the voice for those who have none." In her speech as class valedictorian, Jasmine moved everyone. "I learned about justice not from books, but by watching my father fight against injustice. I learned about dignity not in lectures, but by seeing him hold his head high when everyone condemned him. Today I graduate not just in law, but in humanity." The first case Jasmine took on as a lawyer was that of a young black man wrongly accused of theft. History was repeating itself, but now there was a support network, established protocols, and greater awareness. "We won't let another innocent person be convicted," she promised the frightened young man. And they didn't. With the organization's support, the young man was acquitted. Another life saved, another family preserved. The impact of the Derek Johnson case continued to spread like ripples in a lake. Universities established racial justice clinics. Courts implemented unconscious bias training, and police departments adopted stricter investigation protocols. At an organizational review meeting 5 years after its founding, the numbers were staggering. 347 cases reviewed, 89 innocent people freed, 15 states reached. Every one of these numbers is a life, a family, Derek said, moved. It's a child who didn't grow up without their father, a mother who didn't weep for a son wrongly imprisoned. Judge Harrison, now 65, reflected on his journey. I spent 3 decades as a judge, but I've learned more about justice in these 5 years than in my entire career before. The friendship between the two men had become legendary, the former judge and the man he had nearly condemned, now working together to reform the system that had almost pitted them against each other forever. Emily, now a teenager, decided to pursue medicine. "I want to save lives like Uncle Derek saved mine," she said at a family dinner. "You already do," Derek replied. "Every child you teach to swim is a life potentially saved." The swimming program had become a benchmark, training not just swimmers but conscientious citizens. Many of the children Derek taught became volunteer instructors, perpetuating the cycle of solidarity. One ordinary morning, as he prepared breakfast, Derek received a call that left him in tears. It was from the Department of Justice. He had been chosen to join a national commission for penal system reform. "Dad, what's wrong?" Jasmine asked, worried. "They want my opinion, my dear. The government wants to hear what people like me have to say about improving the system." It was the ultimate recognition of his struggle, from defendant to advisor, from victim to agent of change. The first committee meeting was in Washington, D.C. Derek sat at the table with cabinet members, appellate judges, renowned professors, and his voice carried the same weight as theirs. "We need a system that sees people, not statistics," he said at the inaugural meeting. "A system that questions its own biases before judging others." The proposals drafted by the committee were revolutionary: mandatory cameras in all police stations, a strengthened public defender's office, strict protocols against racial discrimination, automatic review of cases with only circumstantial evidence. During the committee's work, Derek made sure to visit prisons, listen to stories, and gather data. "I can't speak for others without hearing them," he explained. During one of these visits, he met James, a man who had been jailed for 3 years awaiting trial. "Counselor, I'm innocent, but no one listens to me. I'm poor, I'm black, I'm nobody." Derek saw himself in that man. He mobilized the organization, and within 6 months, James was free, his innocence proven. "You gave me back my life." James wept as he left prison. "Justice gave it back. I just helped it see," Derek replied. The changes proposed by the committee faced resistance, of course. There were those who said it was too radical, too expensive, too complicated. "You know what's expensive?" Derek countered at a public hearing. "Keeping innocent people locked up, destroying families. Perpetuating a cycle of injustice that costs society far more than any reform." Richard, always by his side in these battles, backed him up with legal data, statistics, and technical arguments. The duo had become unbeatable in defending their cause. A defining moment came when Derek was invited to speak at the National Police Academy. Many expected an accusatory speech, but he surprised them. "I didn't come here to attack the police. I came to ask that you be the officers we all need you to be. Investigate without bias, protect without discrimination, be justice before it even reaches the courts." The speech was met with applause. Several officers approached Derek afterward to thank him and ask for guidance on improving their practices. 6 years after the trial, the Derek Johnson Act was permanently passed, with significant expansions. It became a landmark in American legislation against wrongful convictions. At the law's signing ceremony, the President of the United States made sure to greet Derek personally. "You've turned your pain into hope for thousands of Americans. That is true patriotism." Derek, ever humble, replied, "I only did what any father would do, fought for justice. The difference is, I found people willing to fight with me." The organization continued to grow, now with its own headquarters, a paid staff, and partnerships with universities. But Derek insisted on keeping free services and an open door for anyone in need. Jasmine, now a respected attorney, took over as the organization's legal director. Seeing father and daughter work together moved everyone who knew them. "She's a better lawyer than I could ever be," Derek said proudly. "But I learned from the best teacher, my father's life," she replied. One special afternoon, the organization received an unexpected visitor. It was Mrs. Elizabeth, the witness who had misidentified Derek years earlier. She was visibly shaken. "I came to apologize again," she said, "and to ask if there's any way I can help. I've carried this guilt for years." Derek welcomed her kindly. "Mrs. Elizabeth, the guilt wasn't yours, it was the system's for using you. But if you want to help, we have an awareness program about the dangers of wrongful identifications. Your testimony would be invaluable." She accepted right away. She became one of the most impactful speakers in the program, sharing her story and warning how easy it is to make a mistake and destroy a life. The swimming program also evolved. It now offered not just lessons, but lifeguard training for youth from underserved communities. Several graduates secured jobs along the shoreline, breaking cycles of poverty. "Every young person who leaves crime behind to save lives is a double victory," Derek would say. Emily, now in medical school, volunteered at the free clinics. The organization provided in communities. "Uncle Derek saved me so I could save others," she'd say. "It's my way of giving back." The bond between the Johnson and Harrison families had grown so close that they spent holidays together, celebrated achievements together, and supported each other through hardships. During one particularly emotional Christmas, Judge Harrison gave a speech. "Derek, you didn't just save my granddaughter that day on the beach. You saved my soul as a judge. You taught me that behind every case, there's a person, a story, a life that deserves to be seen." 7 years after the trial, Derek received another honor, the National Human Rights Award. But what moved him most wasn't the award itself. It was who presented it. James, the man he'd helped free, now working and rebuilding his life. "You told me the justice system gave me back my life," James said on stage, "but it was you who taught justice to see me." The ceremony was broadcast nationwide. On social media, thousands shared the story, many recounting their own experiences with injustice. The impact went international too. Derek was invited to speak at conferences on racial justice in other countries. His story inspired similar reforms in neighboring nations. "Injustice knows no borders," he'd say, "so neither can the fight against it." On one of these trips, he met other activists, exchanged experiences, and learned new strategies. The network fighting wrongful convictions became global. Amanda Rodriguez, now a judge on a higher court, never forgot her roots in the public defender's office. "With every decision I make, I think of Derek and all those who depend on us for justice," she said in her inauguration speech. Michael Peterson, promoted to Attorney General, implemented the reforms he'd promised. The district attorney's office became more discerning, more just, more humane. "I learned that accusing is easy. Delivering justice is what's hard," he'd say in his talks. Derek Johnson's case became the subject of academic study. Theses were written, documentaries produced, plays staged. The story of the man who turned injustice into change inspired generations. At a university lecture, a young student asked, "Mr. Johnson, did you ever feel like giving up?" "Every day," he answered honestly. "But then I'd remember my daughter was watching, that other children were seeing their parents wronged, and I'd find the strength for one more day of fighting." 8 years later, the organization opened its 10th state branch. The event brought together hundreds, exonerated individuals they'd helped, family members, volunteers, supporters. In his opening speech, Derek reflected on how it all began. 8 years ago, I was in handcuffs on trial for a crime I didn't commit. Today, we're here proving injustice can be defeated when good people come together. But we can't stop. As long as one innocent person remains behind bars, our work continues. Jasmine, now the national coordinator of the organization, presented the numbers. Over 1,000 cases reviewed, 234 innocent people freed, 50,000 individuals directly impacted by the social programs. But the most important thing, she said, isn't the numbers, it's the lives behind them. The families reunited, the children who didn't grow up without their parents, the dreams that weren't destroyed. The evening was one of celebration, but also reflection. Richard, now 70 but still active in the organization, gave an emotional speech. "I spent half my life judging people. I'm spending the other half trying to fix the mistakes of that judgment. Derek taught me it's never too late to change, to do the right thing." During the event, several stories were shared. Mary, a mother whose son was freed after 5 years of wrongful imprisonment. Charles, a young man who cleared his name and is now a teacher. Anna, an elderly woman who discovered her husband had been a victim of a judicial error after his passing. Each story was a reminder of why the fight must continue. Emily, now a licensed doctor, announced the creation of a community clinic in partnership with the organization. "We'll take care of physical health, while you take care of the health of justice," she said. The integrated project was innovative. Legal and medical assistance in the same space, acknowledging that social injustice and health problems often go hand in hand. In the following years, the model was replicated in several cities. The Derek Johnson organization became a reference not just in justice, but in integrated social assistance. One Sunday morning, 10 years after the trial, Derek stood on the same beach where it all began. He watched the children from the program playing in the water, all of them now knowing how to swim. Jasmine approached and sat beside him. "Dad, have you ever thought about what our lives would be like if none of that had happened?" "I do, sometimes," he replied. "But then I realize maybe it was necessary. Not the injustice itself, but the fight against it. How many lives have we saved because of what we went through?" "You always find the bright side," she smiled. "I've learned bitterness builds nothing. Only love and perseverance do." At that moment, a child came running up. "Uncle Derek, look, I can swim on my back now." He smiled, seeing in that child all the others who had been part of the program. Each one was a seed of change planted. Richard arrived for his usual morning walk with his friend. "Good morning, lifesaver," he greeted. "Good morning, life changer," Derek replied. The two laughed. The friendship that had begun in the most unlikely way had become one of the strongest things in their lives. As they walked, a young man approached them. "Mr. Johnson, my name is Gabriel. You don't know me, but you saved my father. He was wrongfully accused 3 years ago, and your organization proved his innocence. I came to thank you." Derek shook the young man's hand, moved. "Your father saved himself by never giving up the fight. We just helped." "You're too modest," the young man said. "My father is over there. He'd like to meet you." And so another family joined the vast network of lives transformed by the courage of a man who refused to accept injustice. The story of Derek Johnson continues to be written. Each day brings new challenges, new cases, new lives to impact. The organization has grown but kept its essence, the belief that every person deserves justice, regardless of color, class, or circumstance. In his simple office, Derek keeps the first page of that trial that nearly destroyed his life framed on the wall, not as a bitter reminder, but as motivation. "To remember where we came from and where we're going," he explains to visitors. Jasmine, following in her father's footsteps, has become one of the country's most respected lawyers in cases of racial injustice. But he always says, "My father taught me that a diploma doesn't make a lawyer. Compassion and courage do." The legacy lives on with the new generation. Many of the children who learned to swim with Derek now teach others. Young people who were saved from injustice study law to help others. It's a virtuous cycle that continues. At a national conference on justice system reforms, Derek was the closing speaker. His final words echoed for a long time. "We began this journey with an injustice. We continued with hope. And we will keep going until justice is not a privilege but a right for all. Because as long as there's an innocent person behind bars, as long as there's a child growing up without their father due to the system's mistake, as long as skin color determines the sentence, our fight continues." The audience, made up of ministers, judges, lawyers, prosecutors, and public defenders, rose in a standing ovation that lasted for minutes. That night, Derek went home as he always did, by bus, stopping at the bakery to buy fresh bread for his daughter's breakfast. "Never change, Dad," said Jasmine when he arrived. "Changing on the outside is easy," he replied. "The hard part is keeping your essence when the world tries to change you." And so, day after day, Derek Johnson continues his mission. Not as a hero, a title he always rejected, but as an ordinary man who decided injustice wouldn't have the last word. His example inspired profound changes in the American judicial system. But more than laws and protocols, it changed hearts and minds. He taught that behind every case is a person, that justice without humanity is just institutionalized revenge, that true strength lies in turning pain into purpose. Every morning when Derek wakes up, he knows new challenges await him. New cases of injustice, new lives to help, new battles to fight. But he also knows he's not alone, that he's built a network of people committed to true justice. And when the weight sometimes feels too heavy, he remembers that day in the courtroom when he chose to speak about Emily. The day he chose truth over fear. The day a judge asked for forgiveness. The day everything changed. The courage of one moment can change an entire life, he reflects. And one person's life can change the world. Richard, his unlikely friend, agrees. You taught me it's never too late to make a difference. That the position doesn't make the man, but the man can turn the position into an instrument of justice. Amanda, Michael, Jasmine, Emily, and so many others. Each touched and transformed by this story of injustice that became an example of resilience and change. But most importantly, as Derek always reminds us, are the unnamed. Those who were freed and rebuilt their lives in silence. Those who learned to swim and never needed saving. Those who found hope when all seemed lost. On one of the organization's walls, there's a phrase that sums it all up. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, but one person's courage can be the start of change everywhere. And so, the story continues. Not as an ending, but as a constant beginning, because as long as there's injustice, there will be those willing to fight it, and as long as there are people like Derek Johnson, there will be hope for a fairer world. Recently, on another morning at the beach, watching the sun rise over the ocean where he once saved a life that would change his own, Derek smiled. Not for recognition or achievements, but for the certainty that every day is a new opportunity to make a difference. The ocean taught me, he told Jasmine, who was with him. Every wave is a chance to start again. No matter how many times the tide goes out, it always comes back in. And with this simple but profound philosophy, Derek Johnson moves forward. A man who was wrongfully imprisoned and turned his pain into the liberation of hundreds. A father who taught his daughter that integrity is worth more than freedom. A citizen who proved that one person can indeed change the system. His story isn't just about injustice and overcoming. It's about the human ability to turn the worst into something better, to find purpose in pain, to build bridges where others build walls. And when they ask Derek what his greatest achievement is, he always answers, it wasn't proving my innocence. It was learning to forgive. It was turning anger into action, hurt into purpose. It was discovering that true justice isn't about punishment, but about healing, about restoration, about building a world where stories like mine don't have to happen. End of story. And what did you think, dear listener, of this moving journey of resilience? Share your thoughts in the comments about Derek's courage. Would we all have the same strength to turn injustice into change? Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell for more inspiring stories like this one.